for them. So this is basically what this was. So he says, as is customary, to say something that's connected to the Torah that we learned that week. Why? Warum Torah und ihre Anweisungen sind doch ewige. Bechol Deur v'Deur, in jeder Zeit und in jeden Ort. Und von dem allein, was jede Woche lehnt man, a besondere Parsche in der Torah, ist aber weiß, dass in der Parsche Sashavu ist Merumes und als eine Nir Dohira ist benegert die Passungen von der betreffende Woche, welche man lehnt es hat. Since Torah and its directives are eternal, it's the expression, Torah hi nitzches. It's not like the stories of Torah are stories of the past and that's it. You're reading old stories, but essentially, the word Torah doesn't mean law. The word Torah means lessons. It says in Zohar from the word Hira. Why? Because it's important when you're reading a Sefer to know Kavayachal, the genre, what this book is. What's the genre of Torah? What is it? Is it a history book? Well, if it's a history book, there's a lot of missing gaps, right? Is it a book of laws? There's a lot of stories there. So just tell me the laws, right? If it's a law, if the Constitution shows us say the law. So what is it? The answer is, it's a blueprint for life. That's the answer. So yeah, there's history and there's laws, right? And there's a lot of stories and there's a lot of directives and there's interactions, but everything is a lesson in life. It's like Waze, the divine Waze, GPS, God's positioning system. As you navigate the journeys of life, it's a blueprint, it's a roadmap. That's what it means, a lesson. And those lessons are not for that time. It's eternal, it's timeless. If not, it wouldn't have been recorded. And the fact that every week we read a different parsha means that for the events of that week, there are directives that come from this parsha. How does a punkt work out? So the truth is, if it was a book written by a finite human being, so you could write it for a certain period, for a certain milieu. But if it comes from the author of creation, so its relevance is timeless and also timely in that week when you read the parsha. That's why it's customary to talk about that which we learned that week. So this is his introduction to this group of benefactors, of donors, of activists for the yeshiva. So he begins. Beim Sof von Heintige Sedre, Neuach wird erzählt, als die Menschen, was haben gelebt noch in Mabel, haben gebaut a Stadt mit a Turm. You know what a Turm is in Yiddish? A tower. The people who survived after the flood, the new community that arose, that emerged after the flood, they built a city, an Ir, and a Migdal, a tower, a very tall tower. Something interesting in Babylonia some years ago. I don't know if they found very interesting archaeological excavation. They found the remnants, Yeah, of a very tall tower. Interesting. Yeah. So the puzzle is why they do this. They got pen nafutz al pnei kol aretz. Sie soll nicht zerspreit werden über die ganze Erde. Dem Ebersten ist es nicht gewinn gefallen und hat so nicht gemacht, Eitze vom Bau in der Stadt mit dem Migdal. They were afraid they're going to be scattered over the entire earth. So they decided they're going to create a concentrated community, one city, where everybody is going to live together with a tower. And the pasuk says that Hashem did not like the idea. And he nullified, he obliterated the idea, and it never came to pass. That's the story known as the story of Migdal Bavel, the Tower of Bavel of the Dor HaFlag. L'chayr is nicht verstandig. So it was the zelt is uns the Torah. Was kennen mir jetzt abblenden von der Pasinnen? Certainly an interesting story. But what the Torah puts it in, that means there's a timeless lesson here. It's not just a story that happened, a significant story. This is something about humanity. It's a story of life. It's a story that continues. Wie bald der Torah erzählt ist. Und dazu noch mit Azariches und mit so viel Protem, bei Sach Dinim stehen in der Torah Bläusen Aremes, muss man doch sagen, dass in dem Dosiken Zipris für eine tiefe Anweisung für alle Deures. Für unsere Eltern in der vergangenen Deures, für unseren itzigen Deures und für unsere Kinder und eine Klach in der kommenden Deures. The fact that the Torah writes it, and not just writes it, elaborates with a lot of details. It occupies a significant amount at the end of night. There are many halachas in Torah that are only hinted to. Right? Take Shabbos. It has so many details, but it's all in one pasuk, 2 psukim and chumash. So you have halachas that are relevant every day and every life, right? Many mitzvahs, and they're just hinted, they're alluded to. And here you have a whole arichas, and it's not even a halacha. It's not like what we don't build towers now. We're not trying to build towers. So you have to say that this story contains a profound lesson for generations, for all generations, for our parents in previous generations, for us now, and for our children and grandchildren in future generations. The Anweisung von der dazike Geschennisch für unser Dor. There's a lesson from this story for our generation specifically. Now, as I told you, the Sikha was said, Tovshin Chaf, Parshas Noach, Daled Cheshvan, Thursday, Daled Cheshvan, I believe it was, 1959. Yeah. Betrachtendig wenn und in welchen Matzev das ist geschehen, das hat passiert nachdem, was es gewende Mabel. Von welchem Bläuser Teilmenschen sich geraten wird. Sieht man schon davon allein die Ähnlichkeit zu unser Dor. When you think about when this story happened and what situation, the Torah clearly says this is a story after the flood. Very few people were saved from the flood. So right away, when we see this, we already right away see the relevance to our generation. It's not a question if it's a blueprint for our generation. Und das ist der Hira für unsere Zeit. Nach dem Mabel mit einige Jahren zurück. A few years ago, we experienced a Mabel. The Jewish people and the world experienced a flood, referring to the Holocaust. Was hat vernichtet Millionen Jiden. It's a flood, a raging Holocaust, not by nature, by humans, by the Nazis, by the Germans, that vernichtet. Vernichtet means destroyed, decimated, obliterated millions of Jews. Bloß a Teil von Eden, Schlitter, haben sich geraten wird. From this Mabel, a small amount of Jews emerged, were saved. Darf jetzt die Scheedes Apleite sich ablehnen und bewahren und nicht zu öffnen sich has verschallen, wird die Scheedes Apleite von jenem Mabel. Und mit euch ausmeiden, die nicht gute Teuzeus, was sind angekommen. So this whole story was really a story for the Scheedes Apleite, for the generation that emerged after the survivors of the flood. So right away, when you look at the timing of the story, the application becomes evident. That when we speak today about She'eres HaPleita means those who remained, the survivors who remained alive after the disaster. So we need to read that story to learn about what happened after the flood and where they may have gotten wrong, and therefore avoid the negative results. Base. Gucken dik eben auf die Geschehnis von der Flagge, sieht man nicht so klar, in was ist bestanden der Chet von welchen Bauen anstatt mit Amigdal. When you read the story of the Deira Flagge, the Mefarshim say this. There's no clear intimation what was wrong. By the Mabel, others say, Cain murders Hevel. Okay, we can understand a brother murdering a brother, a human being killing another human being, is antithetical to all of civilization, etc. Deira Mabel, the Torah clearly says, the whole world was filled, Kimala haaretz, Hamas. The world was filled with Hamas. In other words, there was no moral boundaries anymore. It was complete corruption and mayhem and moral chaos. I get it. When you look at the Deira Flagge, it looks like if you just read it, the Torah doesn't say clearly anything wrong. It seems like a nice endeavor. What was the chet? It says that everybody spoke one language. They found a valley in a land called Shinar. They said, let us build a city and a tower, which at the peak of the tower will reach heaven, obviously metaphorically. And let's make a name for ourselves so we don't get scattered over the whole world. And it says Hashem came down to look at the city and the tower that they built, and he said, this is a terrible, terrible idea. Why is it a terrible idea? Building cities is not a bad idea. That's what humanity has done since, and we do it, and we're proud of it. It's important to create cities, to create places for people to live, to create communities, to create societies. That's what he says. Was so weit ist es gewesen gegen den Ebersten zu nutzen, bis es ist gewesen als spezielle Stadlus nicht zu der Losen, der Plan soll kommen zustand. Somehow there was something so remote from Hashem's will that there was a special effort to ensure that this plan will not be materialized. The Torah erzählt, sie haben gewollt bauen an Migdal mit dem Zweck von Venassalon Ushem. Torah says, they said to each other, To quote the pasuk, Hava nivna lanu ir umigdal v'reisha b'shamayim v'nasa lanu shem pen nafutz al pnei kalaretz. Let's build a tower. Let's build a city. Let's build a tower. Make for ourselves a name, so we don't get scattered over the whole planet. Everybody will go their own way in a directionless process. They'll be scattered. You need to create a place where everybody can be together. Yeah. And then when people are together, it's much more powerful. And build a tower. Why a tower? Build a city. What do you need a tower? But the tzvek von amigdal is v'yakleite mefarshim. The point of a tower, the mefarshim explain two things. Aleph, bechdei as euch von der Weiten soll man kennen bemerken und sehen, als if dem Ort gefindt sich a Stadt. Even from a far distance, people will be able to recognize this is a city, this is a place to go to because the tallness of the tower. Beis, that's in the positive sense. In other words, it's a landmark, it's an identifiable landmark that will make it popular and appealing to everybody. This is the place. You can't get lost. And Beis in the negative sense, protection. This will consolidate the security to be able to have a tower. So you'll have security guards, shomrim. Shomrim means the protectors, who will ensure that an enemy doesn't penetrate. They can warn, they can set off the alarm, etc. At the surface, the Torah doesn't even say one word of describing a sinful endeavor here. So you look at the story and is there a clue to find out what was the issue here? And the proof is the Mefarshim struggle with this. Rashi himself gives different interpretations, what their intention was. In the Medrash, there's many interpretations. Other Rishonim, the Ramban, and others have different interpretations because it's difficult to see in the Torah. It says Norva Jaden, Elamai. So how are we supposed to explain this? So the Rebbe says it's three words. V'nasa lanu shem. We want to build a city. We want to build a tower. V'nasa lanu shem. Three words. Let us make for ourselves a name. No, you want to make for yourselves a name? It's something very, very edel. Yeah, Shem Tov, Mishem and Tov. Keser Shem Tov, Oil Al Gabein. It says in Pirkei Avos, there's three crowns. Rabbi Shimon says there's three crowns: crown of priesthood, crown of Torah, crown of royalty, and the crown of a good name is better than all of them. It says in Shlomo Melech says a good name is better than the most fragrant oil. Tov Shem Mishem and Tov, etc. V'nasa lanu Shem. B'shas Menschen kleiben sich zusammen. Bechdei zu bauen a Stadt mit den einzigen Zweck zu verewigen seiner Namen v'nasa lanu Shem. They said they have one objective. The objective is to immortalize their name. We're going to make a name for ourselves. They're coming to build a city. Good thing. Build a tower. Very nice. There's one purpose. The purpose is to immortalize their name. V'nasa lanu Shem. Nit haben dig darin kein hecheren Sil nor bloß zu verewigen seiner eigenem Namen. There was no higher purpose besides to make a name for themselves, to immortalize. Verewigen means to enshrine their name for eternity. Like people, building a monument, building a concrete, powerful edifice for my name. Is chutz dem etzem chisaron davon, was man tracht nur wegen sich allein, on kein shum hecheren Inhalt in Leben. Äußer dem, wenn das ist der einzige Zweck, kleibt man dann nicht über die Mitteln, durch welche man soll verwirklichen und zukommen zum dasigen Zweck. Und man kann sich benutzen euch mit Mitteln, welche seien das Verkehrte von Tzedek und Yosher. There's two things. Number one, the etzem flaw, the etzem chisaron, that which is missing in the fact that a person only thinks about themselves and their name without being guided by a higher purpose and mission in life. Number one. Number two, when this is the point, when this is the objective, then the means to reach the end are not so important. In other words, the main thing is I need a name here. That becomes the objective. So if that's the only objective, a person doesn't distinguish and discriminate what are the methods, the mitlan means the methods, through which to materialize my end goal, because it's about making my name. And therefore, you can also use means which will turn out to be the antithesis of justice and righteousness. Befrata, das ist gewesen nach Hamabel. This is true always, especially it happens after a flood. Was far the Mabel at Noach aufgeklärt. This Sibbe. Zulib was the Mabel wird kommen. Before that, Noach told the world why the Mabel is going to happen. Zulib the nit guter Aufführung von den Menschen in jenem Deur, because of the behavior, the complete moral breakdown of the people in the generation. Haben doch die Gerattewete von Mabel zum Allermeisten gedarft sein zu verrichten dem geistigen Matzev, durch hereinbringen a hecheren Inhalt in sein Leben. So after that, what should have been their main focus? To repair the spiritual and social erosion and corruption that existed then, by introducing a higher purpose, a more transcendent, refined purpose in their life. Is wegen dem haben sie ein ganzes nicht getracht. Und anstatt dem haben sie die Gerattewete von Mabel bloß gesucht am Mittel, wie zu verewigen sie ihr Namen in der Historie. They weren't thinking about this. Instead, those who were saved from the flood, what were they searching for? A way of how to immortalize and make sure their name is engraved in history forever. In dem ist bestanden sie ihr Chet, und der Fall ist dem Ebersten nicht gefallen geworden. And this broke down the whole experience. This was their chet. This was what was wrong. V'nasa lanu shem, and that's why Hashem was so not pleased with it. The Anweisung davon is aklada. What does this mean in a person's life? What's the lesson in life? B'shas meratevet sich von amabel. When you save yourself from a flood, darf men zum allermeisten sich bewahren und verhitten. Soll sich nicht überchasen und chas v'sholem, der gewesen der Matze, was hat gebracht der Mabel. Loi sokum pamayim tzara. Soll nicht aufkommen zweimal derselbe tzara chas v'sholem. As they're saved from a flood, the first thing they have to ask is, what are things that may have caused the flood, and make sure to ensure that that doesn't get repeated. Loi sokum pamayim tzara, such a tzara doesn't happen again. Chas v'sholem. Und das bewahrtet man nicht durch Bauen Stamma Stadt und Stamma Migdal. Nicht haben dich dabei kein schum anderen Inhalt, wie bloß aus der Stadt und der Turm sollen sein als größer und hecher. Nicht durch Chazat Zugang verbessert man den Matzev. Wenn man der aus der Stadt und Turm soll haben Akiyum, muss man in dem reinbringen einen hecheren Inhalt. Was dann beut sich die Stadt bei Hatzlache, und euch die Sachen, was stellen zu der Stadt, werden es happig bis sie helfen noch zu. The precaution for this is not by saying we're going to build the best city, we're going to build the greatest tower, but there's no other purpose, only that my city and my tower should be bigger and taller, so I should be able to immortalize my name. In other words, at the core of everything, there was the unhealthy ego that contaminates the project. But that's not what's going to enhance the situation. If you want your city and tower to really be able to endure, then you need to have something that's authentic, something that's transcendent, something that's really eternal, something that's purposeful, outside of just my ego getting the validation it needs. And then the city could be really successful. And even those things that may be obstacles will ultimately be transformed. What does this mean in a person's life? It's a subtle thing because you don't always see the difference on the outside. What does v'nasal or shem mean? People are involved in projects constantly, internal projects, external projects, right? People build, especially ambitious people, and this was obviously a very ambitious community. They wanted to really make an impact. You have to look. V'nasalonu shame is not what you write in the promotion. It's inside. What's deep inside? What is the motivation? If at the core, the motivation is I want a name. Obviously, I'm not going to get a name by sitting around like a couch potato, but I want a name. They want to become celebrities. They want to be immortalized. That's ultimately what it's about. So they're doing something that at the surface somebody else can be doing, and it's an unbelievable thing, and they're also doing amazing stuff. But because inside, at the core of it all is v'nasa lanu shem, I'm looking for my ego to be satisfied. So essentially, the entire project is destined to failure. Why? Because it's based on something that doesn't really exist. It's based on something that doesn't have any real staying power. To put it differently, like we learn often, why do I need a name? Why does somebody need a name? Was fällt es euch? Why does people work very, very hard to make names for themselves? I don't know if anybody here in this room has the Yetzer Hara or has the Taiva or knows about this, but there's people who work their whole life to make a name for themselves. It's called in America celebrities. Well, what is it, right? Okay, I understand status, and there's money, and there's influence, and there's power, and there's comfort, and there's richness. There's certain also concrete benefits. What's the nakuda here? What do I gain from having a name by somebody else? So the truth is, the emes is, fame. So what does fame do? What does fame do? What does fame do? So this person, if you put their name into Google, yeah, most people put their name into Google, so maybe there'll be one mention, I don't know, DMV office or whatever, right? I once read, or so somebody once said, in the morning in the office he goes in and he types his name into Google. He wants to see if there's more mentions. Instead of 14 million, there's 16 million. Instead of 16 million, 25 million. Yeah. So the real thing is, it's a substitute. It's a fake substitute for love. That's what it is. It's a fake substitute for love. A person needs attachment. Person needs to love and be loved. If I don't get that, and it's usually at age 4 or 5 or 6, the heart may already be broken into 1,000 pieces, consciously or unconsciously. So I give up on that and I look for validation. I look for attachment through validation. Validation means that you validate my existence. That's v'nasa lanu shem. For some people, it expresses itself as, until everyone in the world doesn't know me, who am I? The moment you are wholesome inside, you don't even need one person to know you. You need to know you. I was at some interview somewhere, and a meaningful, one of these organizations, they interview people. It was in the 5 towns. So the person asked me, it was out of the blue, he says, if you could meet one person who lived in history, who would you like it to be? So I said, myself. So he says, I said, myself, I want to meet myself. I said, if you don't meet yourself, you can meet everybody. It doesn't help. So you have a picture, you put a picture of yourself with Moshe Rabbeinu, with Ram. So you have another picture on the wall. And if you meet yourself, that's the person you have to meet. The moment you meet yourself, you don't need one person to know. You need you to know. Moshe Rabbeinu, for him, right, it was a punishment to become famous. Why? It's a madrega, nova. Lav dafke, it's called a madrega. It's called he was a wholesome person. The Baal Shem Tov told the students that he was told that because of something wrong he did, he's going to be punished. What's the punishment? He has to be revealed. What the whole world benefited from was a punishment for him. Moshe Rabbeinu says, Shlach na b'yad tishlach. Chtafes nicht. I'm happy in the desert. Why? Why is he happy? Not because he doesn't have the kaiches, or because just a humble guy, make believe I'm nothing. Fakert, because he's everything, because he's connected. Elamai, he has a shlichus. His shlichus was to change the world. That was a shlichus. V'nasa lanu shem could come from a very, 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 very authentic place, and then it's not v'nasa lanu shem. Then it's for me to be able to be a conduit for the only true reality of Einoid Mulvade. The moment I'm separate from truth, my own truth, now I need substitutes. A person needs value. That you can't live without value. A person needs significance. You need self-value, you need value. What's the value? So if I'm famous, in some way or another, maybe for 100 people, maybe for 1,000 people, if I'm ambitious, for 1 million people. If I'm very ambitious, I need 7 billion people to know me, and I will not rest till I get to that point. And that drives me and drives me and drives me. And if there's one person who doesn't accept me as that, it's miserable. Why is it miserable? Because it's a bottomless pit, because you're investing in a stock that's not real. It's like a cup that has a hole. You could pour and pour and pour and pour a whole day. So garnished, right? If there's no hole, 7 ounces you filled. If there's a hole, how many ounces fill you? Infinity doesn't fill you. You know why? Because there's a hole. And that's why it never stops. It never stops. It's miserable at the core. It's miserable at the core because I have no intimacy with myself. When you have intimacy with yourself, you need relationships, as an authentic connection, as a real relationship. Then it's something meaningful, it's something powerful. When that's missing, v'nasalanu shem. Now what happened? This is one of the symptoms of trauma. Because they went through such a flood, and they were so destroyed, not just destroyed physically, but emotionally, they were destroyed. There's a flood on a physical level, there's a flood on an emotional level. So you need something to hold on to. So what did they substitute the void with? V'nasalanu shem. If I can get compliments, if I can immortalize my name, right, to the point, Nasalanu shem, I'm finally going to feel good. The truth is, when Hashem says I'm mispleased with it, what does it mean Hashem doesn't like it? It means you don't like it. It means it's not real. When you say Hashem doesn't like it, doesn't mean there's a big king in heaven. I know maybe in Cheder that's how you understood. There's a big king in heaven. He says, I don't like this project. It means you don't. It means it's not going to do anything. It's a fake building. It's a fake tower. They used to say about the Titanic, right? The Titanic is such a ship, even God can't sink it. That was the slogan. Even God himself can't sink the Titanic. Huh? Such a ship, right? So Noach's Teva, that was built by an amateur, that survived the Mabel. Unfortunately, the Titanic had a different result. The point is, when it says Hashem doesn't want the Migla, means that it's not a tower, it's not a city. It's going to erode on its own. It's going to destroy itself. You know why? Because that which is fueling it is based on a sheker. What's it based on? It's based on 2 shkarim. Number 1, that my value comes from the fact that I have a name by you. And number 2, which is based on, number 1 is based on the fact I think I'm separate. There's a separate ego. Ego is easing God out. So, and now I invest in this sense of separateness that I have to create because I'm not feeling the attachment with oneness. And I'm desperately trying to create v'nasalanu shem. And it's true in everything. It's true in a marriage. It's true in relationship with your children. It's true in your relationship with yourself. It's true in all of a person's work. The ego needs a name. The soul needs truth. It's a different avodah. So it's not just a psychological or a spiritual thing. It's also a practical thing. The moment it's about the ego, now methods don't matter anymore. You're detached from truth. I'll do whatever has to get done. If I have to mow you down on the way, I'll mow you down. If I have to lie, if I have to cheat, I'm not anchored anymore in anything authentic. You know why? Because there's an outer ambition that takes over. So now the methods also almost become irrelevant. Because even if I'm trying to be a good guy, but ultimately there's something so defected at the core that now this is my oxygen. And if this is my oxygen, I will do everything to get there.
The more they invest in the name, get more corrupted because I invested.
Of course. Yeah. And you have to justify. The more you invest in your name, the more you get corrupted. If you invested 40 years, 30 years, now I have to justify it. It's very hard to say that I put my stocks into something that's worthless. So now I have to justify it and build it more. And anyone who disagrees, it's very painful. It's very hard.
But in a way, they achieved what they wanted to achieve.
You mean we're still talking about them? Very good. He's saying if they would have built a tower, Nebuch would have been another tower from the old world. Right. So you see, in such a funny way, right? Everybody contributes to the ultimate purpose. Everybody. The question is what you learn from them.
Without them,
we wouldn't even be able to right.
It still exists.
Huh?
It still exists. God didn't kill them.
I mean, they're pretty old at this point, but of course, that's the whole point. The concept doesn't just exist. The concept is a.
He lost his law.
Yeah. And it happens after a flood because there's so much pain. Like think in a person's own life. Whenever there's so much pain, I need to fill it with something. So this is a fast, fake way of filling the pain. Celebrity status, immortalizing your name. The more people are really in touch with themselves, with their soul, yeah. Of course, it's nice to have validation, but it's nice. It's nice only because it's a barometer that you're doing, you're productive, you're meaningful. Feedback is a good thing, but why is feedback a good thing? If a compliment creates your value, then criticism destroys your value. That's the fact. And that's why you'll see the greatest of the great, for them, being in a position of publicity, of fame, was a punishment. Why was it a punishment? Because it was literally a distraction of their intimacy with themselves, with the people they were very close to, and with Hashem. It was a Mesiras Nefesh. For Moshe Rabbeinu, the Mesiras Nefesh of leadership wasn't that his Olam Hazeh was compromised. Okay, that too, but that wasn't the real Mesiras Nefesh was that his Olam Haba was compromised. His Dveikus was compromised. Now he has to start dealing with Koirachs, with a bunch of Dasan and Avirams, with all these personalities. This is not who he is. At Dafis nicht, at Kennis nicht. He would have been happy to come into the world and leave the world, and nobody would even know. The Baal Shem Tov, yeah, he told his Talmud, he said he was punished. They say that the Baal Shem Tov once, Talmudim once asked the Baal Shem Tov, whose neshama was he before? So one tradition is Absad Yagan, and there's a story that the Baal Shem Tov told them that there was a Jew in Tzfas, a very simple Jew, and one night he gets a knock on the door, and somebody's standing at the door, and this person introduces himself as Eliyahu Hanavi, and he says that he came to teach him. He wants to teach him Torah. So the person says, "I think you got the wrong address." And how do I know you're not a charlatan, Bichlal? So he says, on the day of your bar mitzvah, you did something that was unbelievably powerful, to the point that in heaven there was such a commotion, and I am so curious to know what you did. I'll teach you Torah, and you see that I know that you did something on the day of your bar mitzvah, but the condition is that you have to tell me what you did. So he says, why is it negayah to you? So he says, I saw what it did for Hashem, and I need to know. So the Jew tells him, whatever I did was for me and for God. None of your business. None of your business. And he was Mishaleach him. He was Mishaleach Eliyahu Hanavi. The Baal Shem Tov said that was his previous Gilgal. What's the Shaykhs of the Baal Shem Tov? The Baal Shem Tov taught the world what Dveikus means. What's Dveikus? Dveikus means that there's a Nekuda even Eliyahu Hanavi doesn't have to know. If there's real Dveikus, even Eliyahu Hanavi doesn't have to know. That's obviously V'nasa lanu Shem in a very edel oifen. Like the Alter Rebbe say, Mili b'shamayim, ich darf Gan Eden, Elam Haba, Elam Haza. Ich will dich allein. I need you. In a real state of authenticity, where you're part of infinity, the very fact that I need a name means I'm already in such a separate, desperate place. Tell me I exist, tell me I exist. And every person who could tell me they exist, it adds a little more value that goes straight out through the hole, because at the core there's a hole, there's nothing there. So that erodes the whole. We create infrastructures of life, cities, towns, whatever that means, physical, psychological, emotional, financial, spiritual. You have to say, what's inside of it all? If inside of all is a desperate attempt to make for myself a name, so first of all, nothing is going to last, everything is going to be destroyed. It's because there's nothing there. Number two, it's not even going to be satisfying to the person, because it's not really what you're looking for. It's just, you think you're looking for it because you desperately need something. And number three, it's going to get the person entangled in behaviors that are always alien to them, because it's a desperate attempt to find value where there's no, and then you just build, like somebody once said, Lincoln said, if you're lying, you need to have a good memory, because you have to remember what you said last night, and then you have to remember what you said the night before. If you say truth, you never have to have a good memory. And I become entangled more and more and more and more, and at some point, the picture of Dorian Gray, I don't know who I am anymore. because I can't face myself, because I had to camouflage myself and become a different type of person. I'll tell you a personal, vulnerable story that I experienced once. I went once to Yerushalayim to visit Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz. You heard of Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz? Rabbi Adin Even Yisrael Zechrona Livracha. This is quite many years ago. I don't know, like maybe 20 or 25 years ago. So I called up his office, or I called him up and asked him if I can have a time to meet with him. So he said, come Shabbos afternoon for Shalosh Shudas time. After Mincha, come to his house. Not some of that was Shabbos morning, but in his house, he lived in the German colony, Moshava Germanit in Yerushalayim. In the morning, he would daven in Tzemach Tzedek in the old city. It was a long walk for him. So I came to his house, and he had back of his house, he has a garden, and there's like a little gazebo, like a little hut, and a stem of a tree. So I don't know, he or I sat down on the stem of a tree. One of us sat on a rock or whatever he had there, a little bench, and we schmoozed as the sun of Yerushalayim was setting over Shabbos. So I told him, I said, as a person who's traveled the world and has visited, I don't know, probably hundreds of communities and has published so many books, and Rabbi Adin he wrote maybe 70 books. He's the first one to translate the Gemara, all the ideas of translating the Gemara. He was the first to really do the Steinsaltz translation. Everything else came after that, even though he doesn't always get the credit for that, but that's a separate sugya. So I said, I'm traveling, I'm speaking to audiences. I want to get advice. From you. Your experience, your experience of the Jewish world, your experience of talking to audiences, of communication, of teaching, etc. So he was a very sharp person, a very smart person. So he looks at me. He had like this little twinkle, short guy, skinny guy, twinkle in his eye. He looks at me and he says, they say that you're good. I said, what do you mean they say? He said, my wife says. My wife went there, you're good. If you're good now, you're going to become better, because you're going to fine-tune your skills, you'll hone your skills, you'll become better. So let me show you how it works. You're going to reach a point that you'll already be very, very, you'll be good at what you do, to the point that you won't even have to prepare. When somebody will invite you to give a lecture, you won't even ask them what topic, because you'll already have filing cabinets in your brain. You'll walk up to the pulpit. On the pulpit, there'll be a flyer with the event, and right then you'll see the topic, and you'll open up the filing cabinet. You'll take out, your jokes, your stories, your message. Boom, you'll give an hour lecture, and you might even get a standing ovation. That's how good it'll be. You'll get your check. They're happy. You're happy. You go home. And this will continue, he said, for 20 years, maybe 25 years, maybe 30 years. And it'll be excellent. Everybody will be happy. And then he said, one day, you'll wake up. You'll get out of bed. You're going to look in the mirror. And you won't see anything. The only thing you'll see is a mouthpiece. That's all you'll see in the mirror. He says, and that day you will know that you died. That you died. You'll become a mouthpiece. That's my message for you. That was his message for life. You understand? Huh? You don't understand? You just become like a robotic machine that knows what it's doing and that has a certain skill. It's not authentic. Huh? It's a skill, it's a mouthpiece. And it's automatic. Huh?
It's the opposite. It's the biggest compliment. You can do it for the...
That's not what he meant. A mouthpiece that's divorced from anything else. It's a mouthpiece. This person could speak, this person could sing, this person could make jokes, this person can entertain. So I asked him, so what's the solution? The solution is that you have to challenge yourself. In other words, you always have to remain anchored in authenticity, that what's being taught is coming from within. You're not anymore selling a message that I sold last year because it sells. It's always rediscovering yourself in the process so that it's not a mouthpiece, it's coming from an authentic place. So you're always growing. If you're not growing, if you're not challenging yourself, if you're not metamorphosizing yourself constantly, so then ultimately it's just perpetuating a fake thing. And then Yosef said you have to surround yourself with people who give you real feedback. They don't care about anything else. So you get married. You have to surround yourself. It's not people who will just, feed the v'nasalanu shame. We will challenge you in a very, very deep place. In every person's life, it was very powerful advice. Because we live in a world where v'nasalanu shame could be a very easy substitute for authenticity. Very easy. It's a faster route, especially if God blessed you with certain talents, whether it's to make money, whether it's to achieve this. It's a very fast way of substituting what your soul really needs, right, with what your ego needs, only because it's so fragile and so weak. I once told you there was a Yid, his name was Shlomo Maimon, Solomon Maimon. It's an interesting personality. He grew up in Lithuania, Belarus. He was a cheder boy, yeshiva boy, a cheder boy. He grew up and he became very, very suspicious of Judaism. And he went on a search. And he left Yiddishkeit. Now this is in the mid-1700s. And he became a big philosopher. He went to Germany, he became friends with Moshe Mendelssohn. Shlomo Maimon was his name. He wrote an autobiography of himself. Later he became, I believe, an alcoholic, and he died very, very young. He wrote an autobiography about himself. He hated the background where he came from, and even more, he hated Chassidim. And that's why you could believe his story, because he's completely not biased. So he came for a Shabbos to the Maggid of Mizrich. This is the 1760s or 70s. Maggid passed away 1772. It's probably the only record I ever saw from somebody outside that records an experience with the Maggid. There's so little. Maggid himself didn't write. The Talmidim wrote or gave over. But this is somebody who despised it from outside. And you could see, he said that he was very, very blown away by the Maggid of Mizrich. And then he went on, he moved to Germany. It's in his own autobiography. So, he laughs at the whole religious jury and Torah, Mitzvah, Gemara, whatever. He didn't. So he brings there 3 Torahs from the Maggid of Mizrich. 3 Torahs. Fascinating. And he was blown away. One I told you once, Vayihi kenagin hamenagin. You remember? When the menagin becomes the niggin. Vayihi kenagin hamenagin. Yeah. That's the opposite of a nasalanu shem. 1 Torah of the Maggid. There's another Torah he brings from the Maggid over there. The Maggid says in Pirkei Avos, the Belazar said, Yihi kvoid chavercha chavev alecha kishalach. The kavod of your friend should be as precious as your own kavod. Literally, it means the honor I give you should be as important to me as the honor I would like for myself. I want you to honor me. I should honor others the same way, right? Like your own honor. It shouldn't be less. It shouldn't be cheaper. The Maggid says, what's the größte gedula that you give so much honor to yourself? That's the paradigm. It says in Pirkei Avos, so he teaches homiletically, perhaps. It means the exact opposite. The kavod that your friend gives you should be as valuable as the kavod you give yourself. It has the same value. Give a practical example. Let's say I finish a speech or a shiur, right? And there's no applause. Rabbi Zriel is not here, so nobody gives an applause. Certainly no standing ovation, yeah? So I'm feeling empty. There was no feedback. There was no applause. Nobody told me that I changed their life. Nobody said it's the best speech I ever heard since the day I was born. So I'm feeling empty. So I go home. And what do? I give this speech again, and when I finish, I jump up and I give myself a standing ovation for 7 minutes, which nobody gets a standing ovation for 7 minutes. You get a standing ovation for 10 seconds, 20 seconds. How good am I going to feel after that standing ovation? Huh? Bupkis. Worse, right? Worse. I did the speech. I got a standing ovation for 7 minutes. The answer is, severt gornisht. Ayin ve'ef is 0. Why? Because the standing ovation you give yourself is worthless. So the Maggid says that's exactly the same like the standing ovation that you're getting from somebody else. Yehi chvoid chavercha chaviv alecha. It should be as precious kishalach. Like the cover. Stand up for yourself. Jump up because you came into the room. Jump up. Get on the table. It's a joke. Doesn't fill the covered neuron. The neuron that's looking for cover doesn't get filled by me giving myself an applause. Why not? Because the whole point is that you say that I'm great. Not that I say that I'm great. In fact, the reason you need somebody else to say you're great is because you don't know how to tell yourself you're great. And even if you're telling it to yourself, you're just telling it to yourself. You don't believe it. So the chisarn of Anasa Lanu shame is not because we don't want people to be immortalized, because it's the contrary. Because we want you to know your real value, your real significance. Your real significance is you're capable of dveikas, of intimacy. And when you have intimacy with yourself, with God, with another, then the Venasa Lanu shame is as hollow as it gets. It's like the standing ovation you're giving to yourself. So you say, what do you mean? But there's 10,000 people who gave me a standing ovation. The ego likes it. I'm not going to deny it. Right? I've been in that position. The ego likes it. But you know how much benefit it gives your life? You know how much benefit it gives your life? 0. And even the ego, how long does it last? 20 minutes. The moment you get a call with criticism, everything is gone. Why? Because there was nothing there. It's like a Ponzi scheme. You know a Ponzi scheme? You invest money. Looks like his Ponzi scheme. He's already in another world. Madoff's Ponzi scheme. You know? Right? $200 billion, what does it really have? It has 0 money. You want to take out your money, there's nothing there. There's nothing. Why is there nothing there? Because there was nothing ever there. It looked like it was nothing there. You typhus? That's the Rebbe's word. And after a mabul, it's scary because I want to survive. We're talking here about a spiritual mabul, also a psychological mabul. The passion is, I want to make myself a name. I need to give myself existence. But what am I giving myself existence with? Something superficial, empty, vanity. Something I don't really need, and something that doesn't really exist. Now, this is not such a popular idea, because what do you mean? If I'm world famous, right? Everybody wants... But it's huh? But this is the truth. Moshe Rabbeinu became world famous, but the reason he became world famous is because he didn't need it. Just like Avram Avinu. The moment you need it, there's nothing to write home about. Then you need me more than I need you. You understand? If somebody would have told Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem would have told Moshe Rabbeinu, you know what, you could retire, go into anonymity, he would celebrate it. Yeshikoyach. I can go back to that space. It wasn't a shlichus, obviously. You have to know what your mission is. When you know what your mission is, then it's not v'nasa lanu shem. Then it's Yizgadal v'Yiskada Shmei Rabba. That's a whole different Indian. Yizgadal v'Yiskada Shmei Rabba. That's not v'nasa lanu shem. That's to be able to be a conduit for authenticity. And then, paradoxically, you have a name because you're connected to the real name. When you're connected, when your name, what do we say in davening after Nasana Toik, if you remember? Ushmeinu karasa b'shmecha. Our name, you called with your name. Or v'shimcha hagadol v'hakadosh, aleinu karasa. Okay, mamish, a few moments here. Dalet. As an inda'ir migdol von Kedusha. You have a city and a tower in Kedusha. Die Stadt, welche wird angerufen Ire Lekeinu. Das ist eine Stadt, was hat in sich a Kedusha dicken und göttlichen Inhalt. Und in der Stadt darf sein a Turim, a Beis HaKnesses, a Beis HaMedrash, weil das ist der Migdal von Stadt, wie der Din ist, als die Gebete von der Schuld darf sein Heche von allen Binyanen von Stadt. It says in Tehillim, there's something called Gadol Hashem V'Hulul Moed Be'ira Lekeinu. It's actually today's Shir Shel Yaim. Ira Lekeinu means a city of Hashem, meaning a city that's saturated with godliness, with Kedusha, and has a holy theme. And the city needs a tower. Like Chazal say, and it says in Shulchan Aruch, Erechaim Kuv Gimel, that the building of the shul of the Beis Medrash should be taller than all the other buildings. That's the Migdal. 753, next page. In klarere Wörter heißt es, men darf bauen ein Stadt der Erden, in welchem man davent und man lernt, was das eine Batiknisi ist, but Midrashim und Yeshivas. In sie darf man reinlegen dem Iker Kraft und der Hauptenergie, als sie sollen sein, was Größe, was Heche, warum sie sein in der Migdal von Stadt. Der Migdal, welcher steht, Mischle, Migdal ois Shem Hashem, boi Yarut Tzadik v'nizgo, was der Migdal verhit von allen Säunen, nicht bloß von einem offenen Säune, nur euch von einem behaltenen Säune. Und beschaß me 40 Chazoi. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped the main point. Siv Gimel. I skipped the main lesson. Mm-hmm. Oh, no, I did that. Sorry. Yeah. I did that. I'm sorry. Und beschas mir 40, also hat man beide Sachen. Erstens hat man dem Ikes-Schar, also man führt durch dem Eberstens Ratsen und man hat größer Zlache in dem Binyan von Iru Migdal de Gdusha. Und dazu bekommt man euch dem Zugabschar von Venasalon Ushem. Als der Nomen von die, was tun in dem, wird verewigt in dem Divrei Hayamim von Idischkeit und von Teure, in der Historie von Sedek und Yoshe. Es wird verewigt, als der und der hat geholfen aufzubauen, dem Nitzchiesdik in Iru Migdal. So there's building a city and a tower, that the entire objective is, how am I going to immortalize my name? How are you going to know about me? That ultimately doesn't have staying power. B'shas, you build the Ira Lekenu. That's what you invest in. In other words, you're building a city that's a conduit for eternity. And you build a tower, the Bati Knesiyas, the Bati Midrashim, the Yeshivas, etc. Then he says two things. First of all, you fulfilled Hashem's will. In other words, it's real. It has staying power. It's authentic. You did the right thing. You know you did the right thing. And there's tremendous hatzlacha. It stays. Besides that, there's v'nasalonu shem in the positive way. What's v'nasalonu shem? V'nasalonu shem means your life becomes eternal. Be'emes eternal. Why? Because your life became part of something that is nitzchiyizdik. When your life becomes part of something that's nitzchiyizdik, it gives real meaning, not fake meaning. When I'm trying to conquer death by creating a substitute for eternity in my imagination, ultimately, the person feels that emptiness, and that's why they always need more and more and more. When you can really attach yourself to true nitzchias, he says, then your name becomes immortalized in the divrei hayamim of Yiddishkeit, of Torah, in the history of justice, of righteousness. You become an indispensable part because it becomes immortalized that this person became part of this eternal edifice that's indestructible. That's where you get the meaning of eternity. The real Vanasal Anu Shem. Hey, last sif. He's talking to the builders of the yeshiva. Mit Avzen bauen die Yeshivas, in welche mit den Zittkinder zu lernen Teure und verspreiten Teure in der ganzen Welt. To build places where children will learn and they'll also be able to spread Teure in the whole world. Die Yeshivas sind doch der Migdal von der Stadt. Darf man sense geressen und verbreiten in die Yeshivas, sie sollen können öffnen, noch Abteilungen und reinnehmen, noch Talmidim. Und wie gesagt, früher ist durch den Bauen der Middel, die Gdusha, hat man seit dem Schara Ikri. Man fährt mit euch dem Rationalien und man hat euch dem Schara Tafel, das hilft euch in der persönlichen Injanem, sie sollen ein Batzlache und euch als man wird verewigt in der Geschichte von Jiddischkeit, wo sie ist die ewige Geschichte. So you need to expand the efforts. And then two things happen, as he said. Number one, you fulfilled Hashem's Ratzon. And then you also have the schar, which is tafel, and that is, your personal life is much more batzlach. You become immortalized in the Geschichte. Geschichte means in the history, in the story of Yiddishkeit, which is an eternal story. In other words, you become take eternal because you become part of something that is immortal. You become part of something that is really eternal, not something that may now seem very grandiose, but ultimately it's going to crumble one day. It's not eternal. You become part of something that is truly nitzchiyizdik. And for that, I surrender the ego's need that I should be eternal, because that doesn't really happen, nor does it really exist even, nor does the need even exist really. And the very I becomes a channel of true eternity. Ah? Der Eberste soll geben, matzlich seine Binyan Yeshivas kam upon him kocha. Und als zum nächsten Mal, wenn man sich zu neuf kommen bei einer Gelegenheit, soll man trachten nicht wegen deckendem Defizit, nur wegen vergrößerndem Migdal als mehr und mehr. Hashem should be matzlich in this building more and more, that next time we meet, in other words, next year, it shouldn't be about covering the deficit, but rather about expanding the tower more, and that Eberste soll geben, soll sein Hatzlache in dem Minyan, und euch in eine Pratis dikim. Should have Hatzlache in this, and also in your all the matters of your personal lives. And you can see, Mesichel Askoni Yeshivas Dr. Lubavitch, hey Parshas Noach Tavshin Chaf. Everybody have a wonderful day, and a good Chodesh, and a freiliche Chodesh. Especially for our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael. Hashem Yishmor Tzeisam Avoya Me'atav Adaylam. Tomorrow morning there's a shir for women, 9:30, right here. Tell your wives or daughters. And Be'ezer Hashem, Thursday morning we'll also meet, 7:45. Bli Neder. Everybody have a lot of atzlacha. Thank you for coming.
Rabbi, you asked for it. You're going to get it.
What? The most amazing. Oh, the most amazing speech. Yeah.
How does one...
The earlier years it was mainly Yiddish. Later they made Lashon Kodesh. That was the language in which the Rebbe spoke. So, did it work out? What happened? I saw you.
He needed to restart the computer.
It worked? And it worked? Das ist ein bisschen Medrash, ja. Oh. So it geht nicht bei dir?
Der Rebbe hat gemacht das so, 0, ja.
Oh, no.
This is 0, Hashim et Amem, Shem.
How do you know where it's coming from?
That's a good question. How do you know where it's coming from? You have to ask your wife.
How do you know where who's coming from? Yes, I live in a new part in Ramat Shem, it's a new place. So there's nothing there. So they need shuls, they need schools, they need yeshivas and everything. So it's come out like whoever moves there first feels the need. But where's it going?
Listen, when somebody's doing something good and important, it's also important to emphasize that. Like, they say a story that there was one Sayyid who came to the Balatanya and he said that he gives a lot of tzedakah, but it's all for ego. It's not true. There's nothing authentic. So he went in like to a dvekas and he said, maybe, but the bread that the children are eating is authentic. So you have to remember that too, you know what I mean? Huh?
There's something there now. We need something there.
A child has bread, it's authentic. I have to work on myself, it's not a stira. The Litvische world, they say a story about Reb Chaim Volozhiner and the Vilna Gaon. I think I heard it from Rabbi Beryl Wine. Reb Chaim Volozhiner wanted to build this Lithuanian yeshiva, the mother of all yeshivas, which he did, Volozhin. And in the Lithuania, that was like the mother of all the yeshivas. And he came to the Vilna Gaon, who was his Rebbe, and he told him, no, it's not a good idea. That's what they say. 10 years later, he came back, and he said, yeah. So the stories, he asked him, what happened? So he says, 10 years ago, it was about yourself. And now it's not about you anymore. It's about the students. It's about the yeshiva. So now you should build it. Well, what's the difference?
I got the answer.
Huh?
I wasn't away over here.
In other words, it's going to undermine your yeshiva. It's not just so it's fine. You'll make a name for you. What's wrong with it? It's a state of consciousness. It affects the yeshiva, because ultimately, anyone who's coming to the yeshiva, you're coming here for me. You're a hechitimtza in me. You're here to serve me. I'm not going to say it. I want my 300 boys, but you're really serving me. You're serving me, and even not a bad me, a good me. Rosh Hashiva, Chashvi Rosh Hashiva. But you're here to serve me. Ultimately, I can't be here for you. You understand? There's an agenda here that I think that's what he meant. It erodes the vision, changes the dynamics. Even if it's subtle, nobody comes in, they don't see it. But deep down, It's the energy. What do the students get out of it? The other way, it's the other way. You're serving them. You're a leader, but you're serving them. So then it's a whole different yeshiva. Then you're attached to eternity. You're creating something eternal. You're part of eternity. In the first case, I'm using eternity to create me, to build my stock because I want to turn the me into something that doesn't really exist. So it's a human need. It's an ego need. Here it's the other way. Now you become a servant of eternity, of nitzchis. But it takes a paradigm shift. And usually a lot of work to get from one place to another place. Usually people get from one place to another place when their ego is shattered. In other words, when the ego is intact, it's nice, the stock is working. When the ego gets shattered by life, that's when many people, they see the worthlessness of it. Everything they invested in is garnished. That's not where they're getting their satisfaction from. And they start rebuilding their soul from the bottom. And it's only with authenticity, with truth, with real relationships, with real connection, with real dveikus. And then they could start building things that last forever. That's the message. Huh?
Is it not attainable without that? Is it attainable without someone going through something to actually...
That's a good question. Is it attainable without a person's ego being shattered?
I believe persons, if not from, no, you have to have if you're from, you can, the Yiddishkeit gonna push you. Basically, the Yiddishkeit is there to build yourself without, breaking relationship, hell, and that's the system. If you're not from, basically, only way to...
But he's not saying breaking the ego, but shattering the ego. Doesn't mean you have to shatter all the relationships.
No, it doesn't make a difference. Money, relationship, how people get broke.
What would drive a person to actually do something to reach it?
So it could be one or two. One, I would say it happens usually in two ways. One is a person who senses authenticity.
What's triggering it?
What's triggering it is they're
then they were born this way.
Right.
So it's not.
You're right.
So it's not like they ever had.
They're usually born, or they had some special people in their lives who showed them that. That's one path, and the other path is through it's tzaddikim and balei tshuva. That's what it is, tzaddikim and balei tshuva. That the concept of a bal tshuva is not I'm a bal tshuva in time. It's a paradigm. It's the person who finds truth through failure. Paradigm means a yesod, huh? Groundhog Day. I don't know. B'makom shebal tshuva aimdim, ein tzaddikim b'orei michaelim lamed. B'makom shebal tshuva aimdim.
Apparently, that says, in a certain sense, that a Bal Shiva reached because the method
Of course, because they appreciate the absence much. They see the darkness much clearer, so they run away from it with much more alacrity and passion. There has the word v'nasa lanu shem, v'nasa lanu shem. Those three words destroy the yeshiva.
Don't they say like the leadership very big in this lolishmo bolishmo and about the students?
Yeah, but it's a different foundation. If I can I can only give people what I have. If all the Talmidim are here to serve my name and make me feel like an important person in the Jewish world, so all I can give them is that they should try to work on their name. I can give you what I have. I can't give you what I don't have, right? If it's true with money, I can't give you money I don't have. I can't give you energy I don't have. I can't give you inspiration I have. So if my whole yesod is v'nasa lanu shem, so that's what I can give my students. I can give my students the security to try to build their ego for the rest of their lives.
And why would that be any different than on a higher level? So it's not necessarily shame, but it's the rewarding part of it.
Obviously, v'nasa lanu shem exists on so many levels, from the most brute level to the most crass level.
I mean, is it attainable to the ultimate level
Yeah.
without any reward?
Listen, we vacillate, but the question is what we identify with more. We all vacillate. We have an ego and we have a soul. We vacillate between the two. Megay dom, megay darton. The question is, what do I identify with? Where do I invest my time, my energy, my money, my relationships? You understand? That's the vart. Of course, we all vacillate. Very few people, a tzaddik remains anchored in that space. It's garnish nigga. Huh?
And we don't know.
Tell you an interesting thing. You ate in my house, Reb Moshe. Reb Moshe, you ate at Reb Moshe. You ate in my house. You remember there's a picture of the Rebbe in my house? You know that picture hanging, a small picture? People come, it's a strange picture. It's like a profile from the side. He's sitting on a box. It's Tisha B'Av with glasses. He's saying Eicha or Kinnis. It was taken by an artist. His name was Wyszynski, Friedrich Wyszynski. He's already in the Olam. He was a real artist, photographer. How did that picture come to me? My brother asked him once, he was eating at my parents' home. He's a secular Jew from Russia, and he came here, he came to Crown Heights, and he became a tremendous photographer. He was a photographer already in Russia, and then Wyszynski, beautiful, beautiful photos of the Rebbe. So my brother asked him, you took thousands of pictures of the Rebbe, which one is your favorite? So he said this one. I said, why? Like you see him from the side, he's reading Kinnis. Like, well. So he said, look at him. Would you ever be able to guess that at that moment 5,000 people were looking at him? He said, you would never be able to guess. That's why it's my favorite picture. He said he was sitting Tisha B'Av saying, would you ever guess? I took the picture that there's 5,000 people looking at him at that moment. He says, look at him. You would never guess. He said, that's why it's... The Zelbe Shivisi, Milosh Neshtavos. Huh? It's not 5,000 people are looking at you. You're a different person, right? A little self-conscious, no? A little chamench. Yeah. Even 20 people looking at you. You know, people come in late to a shir and 20 people look at them, right? You know how you feel for the next half an hour. Should I sit? Should I not sit? What do I do? It's a normal thing because we want to protect that little ego, right? So I'm saying you have a tzaddik who's in a place of dveikas, complete dveikas. Huh? Not that they're not aware. That's also, it may be part of your shlichus. Yeah, you have to influence people. Part of your thing is to know who you are, right? Noyach miktane amonoye, the Baditsheva says. You know what he teaches? Miktane amonoye. Didn't believe in himself. He made himself a nothing. So Melech, if I'm going to be saved, everybody will probably be saved. He didn't think he could change anything. Also, Moshe Rabbeinu said Mechenina. He wasn't Miktane Amana. He knew his koyach. Why? The moment you know that your koyach is Hashem's koyach that's going through you, then you could know all your koyachas. Then you could say, "Of course, I could change the world." You know that? When you think it's your own koyach, I can't change it. It's not garnished because you're a good guy. You're an anav. You're actually humble. You're actually right. You can't. The moment you know who you really are, then you could believe in yourself because you know who you are. Then v'nasalanu shame is a whole different shame.
What about the Magid? He said before,
Elisha says, "Kuli menagin." Vayi kenagin hamenagin vatiyah lov yad Hashem. Frag the Magid, what's vayi kenagin hamenagin? Yeah, vayi kishehizchil menagin. So he says, kenagin hamenagin, as the menagin is given the nigin. Or the menagin became like the instrument of nigina. A violin doesn't have an ego. When I finish playing, if you don't applaud, the violin doesn't mind. The violin is a tool for the music. There's no ego. It says, "Vahi kenagin hamenagin." When the menagin becomes like the violin, you're a tool for the nagina. There's no ego. There's no separate self. There's no v'nasalanu shame. Then vatiyah lov yad Hashem. But it's very hard because I'm the menagin. But if you really want to be the menagin, you can't be a menagin. You have to be like a violin, you have to become the niggin. It's the same word like It's interesting, he didn't realize it's all the same word. This is what it is and this is what not, but it's the same word. So we always knew it from Shlomo Maimon. I actually saw it from Steinsaltz, he quotes it. But I saw lately, a few years ago, a guy found one of the Talmidei HaMagid wrote down these titles. I forgot what the third one is. The third one is also Adahay one, I forgot. But he found in other sources, which is a Moide de Kazakh, because the only source was Shlomo Maimon. Now you could believe him, because you could hear the Magid, you can hear the Chassidus, and Shlomo Maimon did not like them. So if he's praising it, kannst him gläuben. And Halucha Zarva Lepicha.
What didn't he happen? How do you say? Why didn't he turn him over?
Wie lange ist er beim Magid? Wo ist er getein?
You have to be open. You have to be open. He was there for a Shabbos. The Magid was white. He said that the Magid asked everybody for his name. And then he spoke a Torah, and every person's name was part of it. He said it was half of a fella.
You got the.
He said there was something very impressive there. But he had a lot of, I think he had depression and anxiety and self-hate. It was complicated. He was also brilliant. I think he died from depression and alcoholism. He had a hard life. But he was a genius. There's no question he was a genius.
You had a Talmud to name, a big Talmud from
Moshe Mendelssohn. Shlomo Maimon is right.
Went to the Magid.
But for Shabbos, he writes. And I think the Vort, I don't think he heard the Vort from the Magid himself. I think he heard it from a chassid of the Magid. I think that. He heard from somebody who said it from the Magid. He says, I don't like them, but these things, I have to admit, left an impression on me. He says, I don't like them. I don't like the Chassidim. I think they're, he's very, very negative. Bechlal from a Yidden, befrat Chassidim. This is mamash the first generation. This is a few years after the Baal Shem Tov. It's not later. But he had something bothered him. But he says these titles, I have to say, were they opened them. Because he was a teichendike mensch. A kluge mensch. And he heard that there's a Reichkeit there. Huh? And there's a bittel, a transcendence, there's a... You can nagen am nagen. For a person to say the word, darf man doch sein. The whole world is invested in ego, and here a person is trying to go away, The egos are davar mos. For some people, v'nasalanu shem is everything. That's Yiddishkeit too. I'm going to become a gadol, so I'll have a name forever. This is the poor person, you're building something that you're not even looking for. You're looking for because you don't have yourself. In your metaphor would be, like the wave decides to detach from the ocean and build for itself a name. Or the ray, yeah. The ray says, I'm going to build a name for myself, and it detaches from the sun. It's a very good marshal. So what happens to the ray? And you put it in a frame, and you laminate it. And the Levana, I'm gonna make a name for myself. Look how powerful I am. And what happens to the ray? Olav Shalom, it's dead. Dein ganze Sache is that you're the sun, Shaita. You have a name. Stay with the sun, and you'll be. The wave gets up. The wave says, "Oh, I'm a big guy." So the wave says, "You know what? I'm gonna go live. I'm gonna go build myself a villa on the beach." So what happens to the wave? Huh?
And then it dries up.
A puddle that dries up. You know that the Vilna Gaon had a student. His name was Baruch Mordechai Ettinger. He was the Rav of Babroisk in Ukraine. And later he became a Talmud of the Balatanya. He was a Gaon, and Baruch Mordechai Babroisk. He was the Rav of Babroisk. Ettinger was his name. So there was a puddle in front of his house. It never dried up. It was like a little puddle. So they asked him once, what's the secret of this puddle? He says, I'll tell you. It says, the Gemara says that Hashem showed Adam dor v'dorshav, generations, and every generation he showed the leaders of the generation, the darshanim, the speakers, the teachers, the expounders. So he says, so Adam was listening to all generations, and then he came to our generation, and they came to the city of Babroisk. So Adam asked, who's going to be the Mored Asra of Babroisk? So they said, Baruch Mordechai Ettinger. Adam Rishon said, Pooh! He spit. And he said, and the spit didn't dry up. You understand? Such a gadol you could trust. First of all, he had a good sense of humor. There was once a woman, she came and she lost a Pesadim Torah or something. So she started to curse him. She lost herself, so she started to curse him. So the Gabbai, the Shamash, he wanted to throw her out. And he said, laws, and it was cursed. So he said, it's not covered up Torah. He says, he main garnished, it's nothing. What do you mean? He says, do you mean what she says? Of course I mean what she says. So Baruch Mordechai turns to her and says, would you like me to give you a bracha that your son should grow up like me? She says, Avada, 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 Avada. A good chaydish, a good year. No.
You told one that your grandfather went to camp, something, right? Your grandfather. But they didn't let sleep. They were torturing by not letting people to sleep.
You have to remind me.
It's your
Oh yeah,
grandfather.
my grandfather.
So
Yeah.
this basically, the Begin has two books. This book's autobiography. He describes all this very well. It's just basically autobiography book. So maybe since you're you're not the first person I'm buying it for. It's just somebody who told me that his grandparents went through the same. Well, he just describes very well. It's interesting to read.
Wow.
It's out of print, so it's why I bought used.
Wow.
So it's
Okay.
not because of it's used.
Put your
so-
name, put something, make
No,
a
it's probably,
sham.
no, probably.
It's not. He's not into Vanasalonu shame.
The way here I came to see you.
If your grandfather went there, just he details how he was taken, how they talked to him,
Yeah.
the names.